Welcome. So we have Diana Frost, who's the Global Chief Growth Officer for Kraft Heinz, and Todd Kaplan, who is the CMO for North America, which is, I understand, by far your biggest region or territory for the company.
Yeah.
Significant margin. We're trying to change that.
So the first question, we actually, before we got together here, we were able to poll the audience a little bit and get some questions. So I'm going to field some of mine and some of theirs.
Okay.
And one that's come up quite a bit is you're both fairly new in your roles at Kraft Heinz. And Diana, I think your role may be even kind of a bit of a new role altogether at Kraft Heinz. So you're the Chief Growth Officer. Marketing is a part of your organization, and we just love to understand what that says about how Kraft Heinz even thinks about marketing.
Yeah, so just so excited to be here, guys, today, and Todd and I are very, very informal, so we'll have some interaction in and out. But
Such a small room.
yeah, so really happy to be here. I think one of the things on the Kraft Heinz journey that I think is really important to call out is a number of years ago, and I shared this in kind of a speech I did at Cannes this year, is we were a bank that sold food. And not a good bank. Consumers were not being put first, brands were not being put first, and everything was about delivering efficiencies and the bottom line in search of probably the next merger. And so we've been on a journey, I would say, over the last number of years to really get back to when you've got flagship brands that are over 150 years old, that comes, I would say, with a huge responsibility. And so I think we're taking that responsibility seriously now and really going back to our roots in understanding why Heinz is the way that it is, why Kraft is the way that it is, and really taking that as a gift to bring forward for the next 150 years. And so bringing that to my role, I've been in role since January of last year, and it's the first time actually that Kraft Heinz as an organization has had a marketer and strategy lead on the C-suite. And so that in and of itself, to your point, is a statement. So within my remit, there's strategy, there's marketing excellence, there's consumer insights and analytics, there's R&D transformation, there's innovation. And so it is a pretty broad remit, but the reason there's enterprise strategy, the reason why that was put together was to make sure that from strategy all the way through to execution, you can build an engine. And so January was put in the role. April was when we actually, for the first time, had a global marketing structure. So very, very new. And then just this past August, we brought in Todd, who is a brand genius, and I think at Adweek they gave him a brand genius award, but to come in and run our biggest business in North America and really, truly driving the marketing function.
And so, Todd, you joined recently too, as Diana said, and after a long and storied career at Pepsi. So what drew you to Kraft Heinz, and how are you thinking about marketing in the context of everything Diana just said?
Yeah, I think it's, listen, Kraft Heinz, it's a wonderful company it has 70 brands in North America, 50 categories, 3 different temperature states, highly complex, very broad, and very deep business. I think it's like $22 billion in North America, kind of and so as you look across all of this, and then look at the potential for these brands, right? You look at, right now we have a lot of iconic products, and we want to elevate to iconic brands, right? And you look at this idea of brand building and the roles that brands can play. I look at the whole portfolio and the commitment they have to marketing excellence. So you look at the creativity journey they've been on over the last 5 years that Di and team have really led in North America and beyond. When you look at the categories they play in, right now that's like 98% household penetration, which means basically every single one of you have some of our products in your pantry, in your fridge, in something. There's such a great starting point to be able to tell the right stories, build the right, behaviors within the brands, the right fundamentals, and really help elevate both the strategic rigor, the creativity, and also ultimately the business performance within this region. So coming in, I saw it as a great opportunity to really help build capability, really connect these brands to culture, which are these storied, amazing brands, and really help kind of elevate our game from everything from comms to innovation as we push forward.
At Brand Innovator sessions, we tend to talk about the intersection of marketing, media, and innovation and technology. So based on everything you just said, how are you thinking about that intersection in the work that you do?
I mean, it all comes together. It's all, to your point, it all needs to stay close. I think in today's landscape where the lines between what's content, what's media, what's a sale, what's a marketing kind of push and all that, I think as we look at our teams and how we want to build our brands moving forward, we just need to make sure we're continuing to integrate those lines and really innovate in terms of both the products that we're having. So our portfolio is going to look very different. If you look at the next 10 years, we have this 10-year journey that we're on to really change the shape of our portfolio, what type of food do we want to be making, for what type of consumers, what type of occasions, but then also how we go to market in terms of our media mix, right? We're not just going to put on TV spots and hope for the best. You know, it's how we kind of rethink all of our models from how we buy our media, how we brief our agencies, and that's part of the transformation we're just getting going with right now in North America, which is really exciting.
I hope you're not doing anything to stovetop.
Not that I'm aware of. Why? Well, you like the stuffing? You're a big stuffing
It's
fan?
that time of year too.
It is that time of year. Stovetop. Get your Thanksgiving. We also make gravy for anyone looking at Heinz gravy.
Nice gravy, really good. Also good for every day.
We talked a little bit just before about how the consumer attention is more fragmented than ever, and I know brands like Kraft Heinz, you're always also thinking about how do you personalize your relationship with the consumer. So how are you thinking about that challenge in an ever more fragmented consumer environment?
Yeah, I think Todd said it really, really well. I mean, ultimately, we have to elevate consumer experiences. That is what we're in. And so whether you have a consumer experience in brick and mortar retail or online or otherwise, it should be a similar impact. And so that's what we're looking to do. And we're very, very clear on the audiences. So when you think about our portfolio, what's so important is actually when you're getting people in. And what we did over the last, I would say, number of years, we lost a huge part of our audience. We lost a ton of household penetration. I think about the UK, I'll give an example. So many people used to grow up on Heinz beans. And people within our organization had forgotten that actually 40% of people who live in the UK were not from the UK. They didn't grow up with that as part of an occasion for them. And so some of the work that we're really doing is better understanding audiences, better understanding those occasions and what that's going to mean. Because household penetration is key. And so bringing in that next generation, regardless of brand or portfolio, is critical. So we need to understand our audiences better. And yes, we need to connect with them better. But at the end of the day, our job is shaping consumer behavior. And changing consumer behavior, yes, it's gotten more complex over time. And so why it's important for us even to be here and have this conversation today through business solution partners like the Trade Desk, like the partners through Brand Innovators, is we need solutions provider to deliver and enable us to deliver consumer experiences in the world that we live in with fragmentation.
And I can attest to the beans. And I grew up in the UK, so I grew up on beans on toast.
Everything.
Yeah, beans on toast. In this environment that we're talking about, I can only imagine the massive data and different kinds of data that you have to deal with. And how are you thinking about the data challenge as you try to personalize your relationships through marketing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, listen, data is important, especially nowadays that you have all of the access to data. But data, a lot of times, should be an indicator, not a solution, right? And so it's something that it's like right at the doctor's office, you take your temperature, you take your heart rate, you take your stuff. Like, you have all these facts, but it shouldn't be the thing that you're trying to go to. It should be all things that help inform the work you're doing and you use directionally. I think there's a lot of times where, I think the watch out is marketing is not paint by numbers, right? And so it's not going to be like, if you do this, then you get this, you drive this up. Of course, as you go lower funnel, it is more paint by numbers down lower. But as you kind of look to build the brand building game, in addition to kind of some of that lower funnel stuff, it's important that you have the right strategic rigor, the right analysis, the right, metrics that you're going after. Is it working? Is it not? But then you also maintain the role of creativity and the art that you bring into the mix to make sure you can drive the biggest impact. Because one of the biggest multipliers, if you're thinking about like ROI on, for example, on any creative, we can talk all till we're blue in the face about all the data measurement tools and the new offerings from Google and this and that, and it's all great. But if the creative sucks, it all doesn't matter. And so at the end of the day, there needs to be, it's important to worry about the data, to think about it, but it's not at the expense of the other side, because I think aside from scale, the number 2 driver of ROI is creative. And so you need to make sure you have the sharpness of your message, who you're talking to, what you stand for, a distinctive point of view, visual identity, on and on and on, integrate creative execution that is fit for that medium, and tailored to the people you want to buy with and all that stuff. And that's when you'll start to see the 1 and 1 equal 3. And so, to be clear, we care a lot about data, very important, but it's not at the expense of it. It's just integrated into the broader creative process.
And I think the other piece I would just add is we are very data rich and in a lot of places insight poor. And so one of the skill sets and capabilities that we continue to look at as you're building the marketers of today and tomorrow is the ability to interpret that data. That sounds very simple to say, not easy to do when you have that much data coming at you every single day. And so we're doing a lot of work. Obviously, there's tools and tech and partners that are enabling us to see it better and get from data to insight to action. But I don't want to lose the piece, to Todd's point, that it's not just data to action. And a lot of work needs to be done on training this next generation on delivering against insight and being very clear on what an insight is versus what an insight is not.
It sounds like you're hinting at a bit of a skills gap, perhaps. Is that something you're thinking about within your own company or within your ecosystem, which I imagine is large, of partners?
I think it's all of the above, I would say. But I'd say we're going to start with our own company. Obviously, there's a big capabilities agenda trying to build the right behaviors the right way. What's the Kraft Heinz approach to marketing and all that, which is right now some wet clay that we're actually sculpting. Di and team have done an amazing job building this thing we call brand growth strategy, the brand growth system. That is essentially a very rigorous process to really understand, how you're going to grow your penetration, all the different things of your brand, and really a great foundational effort. And then as we look to kind of pull that through into the innovation process, the creative process, the media buying process, all those other things, making sure our marketeers have the right both strategic mindsets and creative mindsets and execution-driven mindsets. This real 360, rounded marketer point of view is what we're really trying to build this capability at the end of the day.
We had a little conversation about AI just in the session just before, and perhaps it's worth dwelling on that here again. So to what extent do you think about AI as helping in getting from data to insights? To what extent do you think about AI as helping in the creative process?
Yeah, I think just like everyone, AI is here to stay. It's like when you went from pencil to computer. It's a co-intelligence tool that is not going anywhere. Now, there's a lot more parameters around what that means in this shift and what's happening. What I would say how we're looking at it is just that. It is a co-intelligence. So we are looking at it in areas of productivity. We've done a ton of work actually, particularly within supply chain and digital twin to enable efficiency in supply chain. We think about it and we've done some pilots in relation to content and what that's going to look like in audiences and actually doing content at scale so you can drive greater effectiveness. We've got AI helping us. We've got a recipe development tool that we leverage AI to help consumers to cook better. So again, we're seeing a concept created in innovation. So we're piloting it in a number of areas similar to a lot of others. We are no different than anyone else. The piece that we're trying to get at is where are the areas where you get disproportionate value at scale? Because you can apply AI to so many pieces. Is that going to make you better, faster, more effective? Remains to be seen, because when you're actually looking at a lot of business cases, the proof is not in the pudding yet. So what I would say is we're looking at the entire value chain and saying, where are we going to get disproportionate impact from leveraging AI? And then we will fund that versus trying to get AI at scale on everything.
Well, just one build to that too. And I think it's interesting hearing everybody talk about AI, and I go back to when Web3 was all the rage, and before that, there's always a shiny penny that everyone's obsessed with. And rightly so. Like, AI is freaking amazing and fascinating and terrifying and all of those things. All the things, right? But there's no such thing as an AI strategy. There's a strategy and how AI can help that strategy. But if you're trying to build an AI strategy for the sake of just getting it on the AI gravy train, like, stop.
Yeah.
And actually say, what am I trying to do with my business? I have a strategy. I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. What are the areas where AI can come better enable it, or cut corners, or cut costs, or do things, or be more efficient? That's the role of AI. And so I just want to make sure to kind of ground it like the strategy doesn't change. AI just helps facilitate it bigger, faster, wider, all that kind of stuff.
And it actually invokes so much more on what you need from a capabilities perspective on the ability to ask the right questions. AI is useless without training it properly and asking the right questions. So spend more time on that and less time on playing with the shiny toy.
All right. I don't think it's any secret that in the last few years, some consumers, many consumers, have felt more pocketbook pressure than ever. I'm just wondering how you think about, or how Kraft Heinz then thinks about the role of marketing in that context. How do you continue to try to drive brand differentiation and loyalty in new ways in that kind of environment?
Yeah. I'll take this one, I guess. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So listen, and everyone talks about, yes, the economy and private label and all that is very well documented. At the end of the day, the role of brands is to drive differentiation. So you can't kind of stoop down and just say, keep cutting price, 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 price. Again, you can do that, but by the end of it, you're just going to be no different than private label. The role of brands is to build a deeper emotional connection with consumers, and ultimately the concept of a brand is you charge a price premium because it's a brand name. You care about the brand. It means something more. It's not just the quality of the product, it's the emotional, contribution that it gives to you in whatever way, shape, or form that looks. And so I think the role, as you look at, as the economy gets pressured and people are almost going back like into COVID, right? When there were more limitations, there were more things happening, you actually saw the role of brands emerge much more because they're known, they're trusted, they care about them more, they mean deeper things. And so when you have a powerful brand, you'll be able to go through those trying times a lot tougher. And so I think in this tougher economy, I think it's funny, as everyone's thinking, cut costs, the economy, I'm like, this is time to actually lean in and invest in brand building because it's a point to show why you have a point of difference, why your products, why your brands matter that much more.
And that's why I'm so proud. I mean, in this tough economy, we're investing more in marketing, we're investing more in R&D. And so one of the things that we've seen over the last number of years is we've got incredibly high salience of brands, but meaningful and different have declined. So when you think about the investment required, as you think about the entire value proposition, that's why we're investing in R&D. When you think about connecting with consumers, that's why we're investing more in marketing. And so why we look to partners, and many of you in this room and others, to deliver on those experiences. But it gets back to what is that right value equation. And we have a responsibility. We are in 97% of households across North America. So you think about the responsibility not only to accessible brands, but accessible food. And so we take that and food insecurity incredibly seriously as we're working through the value propositions of our brands as well, because there's a much bigger opportunity and responsibility that we have in the company.
Perhaps I could also ask about another hot topic in our industry these days, which is retail media networks, shopper data. How important is that becoming for one of the world's biggest CPGs like you?
Yeah, I think from a retail media perspective, look, it is something that is important as long as it doesn't get out of control. And so I think one of the biggest pieces you have to look at is what is the component of retail media networks that's to drive brands, and what is the component that is actually to drive lower funnel and conversion? And you have to split the two out. What is commerce and what is particularly brand building? And so as an industry, we need to continue to look at that all together. And I also think it's incredibly important, regardless of what industry you're in, the governance part, to make sure that when companies are under pressure, that you don't get into bad behavior because it becomes another trade fever. So important to the business, not the most important thing to the business, and how do you delineate those two things?
We're sitting here in Roku's amazing office here in New York. So I think it would be remiss if we didn't talk about streaming TV and the transformation of television, but also digital audio and the transformation of radio, and how that might be playing into how you think about your media mix.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, as a brand, you want to be where consumers are spending their time, right? And you want to be there in the most authentic, least intrusive manner. And if more people go into streaming, more people go into all this stuff, of course, we're seeing it emerge, new ad hacks and new ways and this and that. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what platform you're on, if you're on Roku, if you're streaming, if you're watching a TV, what matters is how your brand shows up within that context. And so, yes, we can be one of the 6-second pre-roll, or we can get a 15-second segment that they force you to watch in the middle of your thing, or you can just become the content yourself, which is the other thing. It's really important is if you're seeing kind of the blurred lines between branded content and where brands create kind of content and experiences. I think platforms like Roku are great ways to really deepen that connection and with the right ideas and the right content. So we'll probably play a little bit in that space as we get our sea legs around a couple of our brands, while we'll still look at it in the full media mix around where we want to spend our buy and whatnot.
There's been a ton of focus over the last couple of decades around sustainability, particularly in your world. But I know Kraft Heinz has been around for 150 years almost and has its roots in sustainable agriculture. So how do you think about kind of telling the story of the sustainability of your business while trying to get everybody to understand, hey, we've been at this for a while. This is authentic to us.
Yeah, I think when it comes to sustainability, I think there's three pillars it goes into. I think there's one component that's do no harm. And I think that's one piece that all companies are looking at. Then there's another component of where sustainability becomes a pillar of your strategy. And then there's a third piece of where is it actually part of your DNA. So when I think about Heinz and being the name on the door, I think what's so important is going back to our roots. H.J. Heinz was one of the first in farm to table. If you look back at our roots there, that was such a big part of how Heinz became what it is. And so I think what's important over time, when you understand your DNA and the DNA of your brand, you can bring it to light, again, in modern ways. And it's not something that's just made up on its own. It's something that is deeply rooted in our history, and then how do you bring it through the value chain of today and the value chain of tomorrow. I think the other piece that I'll mention here is sustainability beyond environment. And I spoke about it a little bit earlier, but I think what's important on this one is when, again, you're in 97% of households and food security and what's happening right now in the world, we have a huge responsibility there. So what you'll see is things that are important to the company because they are important to our roots, and those three pillars and how you look at your brands, of the do no harm to a pillar of your strategy, to a part and true to your DNA, allows you to make determinations in how you speak to consumers.
Fantastic. I think we're coming toward the end, but it's getting close to lunchtime for a lot of people here. So one final question. What's one Kraft Heinz product that you recommend that everybody here should, maybe it's a under the radar one or it's a one that's coming up, a new one? What should we all try?
You go ahead. I got one.
I love Philadelphia whipped cream cheese. You ever given it a go? Solid. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, big time. It's delicious. So that'd be my go-to.
Yeah, the versatility of that product, far beyond the bagel, my friends.
Totally.
Actually, one for me. So I'm Canadian, born and bred, so we don't have it in the U.S. But Kraft peanut butter, so good. Like, so good. If you ever are visiting Canada, I would highly recommend it.
All right, now that you've got us suitably hungry, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.